Cage did feel and say that any sound could take its place in a piece of music. There was no sound that per se was not musical, that any sound could be part of a piece of music.
He's not putting you on. He's not trying to one-up you, trying to be superior to you. He's trying to demonstrate something you haven't heard before.
I certainly had no feeling for harmony. And Schoenberg thought that would make it impossible for me to write music. He said, you'll come to a wall. You won't be able to get through. And so I said, I'll beat my head against that wall.
American Masters is made possible by a major grant from the National Endowment for the Arts and the financial support of viewers like you, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the Marilyn M. Simpson Charitable Trust, the Marjorie Carr Adams Charitable Trust, and Rosalind P. Walter.
I have come through my music to enjoy the sounds that are in my environment, wherever I am. I wouldn't say that I understand the environment. I simply experience it. The first question I ask myself when something doesn't seem to be beautiful, the first question I ask is, why do I think it's not beautiful? And very shortly you discover that there's no reason. If we can conquer that dislike, or begin to like what we did dislike, then the world is more open. That path of increasing one's enjoyment of life is the path I think we all best take. To use art not as self-expression, but as self-alteration, to become more open.
Composer John Cage, one of the most influential creative figures of the 20th century. Musician, philosopher, visual artist, and writer, Cage has been and continues to be at the very center of the avant-garde.
I think Cage will always be recognized as one of the most important American composers / musical figures. You could still say that he was one of the most important composers, even if I remain fairly guarded about the music. But the ideas are seminal.
He's become the true international artist of our time, which is to say the man who seems to be revered in nearly all the Western, in nearly all the countries of the world.
Cage is innovative, experimental, and controversial. He was the originator of the multimedia happening, a pioneer in electronic music, and the leading figure in indeterminacy in music through chance operations. As we come to know John Cage better, it becomes clear that he is perhaps the most influential in a long line of artists whose challenge to the way we perceive experience has reshaped aesthetic thought in this century.
Even the people who are writing different kinds of music from Cage, I'm sure in some ways are either influenced or either went against it or whatever, but still, the fact that Cage's music is here is something in everybody's subconscious.
I've never felt that Cage has ever had any interest in shocking people or upsetting people. I think he's a missionary. I think he would like to really make everybody become an artist and make everybody capable of responding intensely to the life that they're living every day.
There was an international conference of philosophers in Hawaii on the subject of reality. For 3 days, Daisetsu Taitaro Suzuki said nothing. Finally, the chairman turned to him and asked, "Dr. Suzuki, would you say this table around which we are sitting is real?" Suzuki raised his head and said yes. The chairman asked in what sense Suzuki thought the table was real. Suzuki said, "In every sense." Why do I have to go on asking questions? Why do they call me a composer then, if all I do is ask questions? I have nothing to say, and I am saying it.
People probably first hear of Cage more from the perspective of the musical conceptualist who's setting off little sort of brain time bombs in one's way of thinking about music and indeed about life. But in terms of the actual music that I derived traditional pleasure from, it was to prepare piano pieces.
In 1938, Cage went to teach at the Cornish School in Seattle. There he met dancer Merce Cunningham, then a young student, and soon Cage began writing music for Cunningham's dances, including this piece, In the Name of the Holocaust.
I first prepared the piano in Seattle, but this piece was written here in New York. I wrote it for a dance of Merce Cunningham. At the time, when I wrote for the piano, which I had to do it in this case because the theater was small and had no wings for musical instruments. It simply had a piano in front of the stage. And it was kind of built into the seats of the audience, so that the only instrument that could be used conveniently was a piano. And I had the experience earlier of studying with Henry Cowell, so that I knew that he had obtained sounds on the strings of the piano by plucking them, or by muting them, or by stroking them, this kind of sound. Or this kind of sound. And so I extended the idea to putting objects between the strings. The first object I put, not between the strings, but on the strings, was a pie plate. And that jangled and moved about. So then I knew it had to be something that was fixed. And first I put a nail, and it slipped. Finally, I put a wood screw. And because of the grooves in the screw, it stayed sufficiently long in position to give a sound that could be repeated.
I love these. My jangle nuts.
Yes. These bolts are very good because the grooves are very close together, and there's very little possibility through the vibration of the strings, of there being any movement.
Now, one last preparation. There. That's it.
Good.
Cage's closest collaboration has been with one of America's most important dancers and choreographers, Merce Cunningham. As music director of the Merce Cunningham Dance Company, and as a close friend of Cunningham for over 40 years, John Cage has played an important collaborative role in the development of dance in this century. From the beginning of their association, Cunningham and Cage shared the idea of allowing music and dance to proceed independently of one another, each at its own pace and in its own unfolding patterns.
I think a thing that we agreed to so many years ago actually was that the music didn't have to support the dance, nor the dance illustrate the music, but they could be two things going on at the same time. It's just two things happening, not necessarily connected or disconnected, but two separate things going on at the same moment.
Which is characteristic of life.
Yes, you have that every day in your lives. We start together with the music and the dance, and all kinds of different things going on in the two, with the music doing one thing and the dance doing another. Using the little ones.
Uh-huh. Are you all right?
Mm-hmm. No, I'm fine, it's fine.
Have you finished?
You're going to use that one on the floor?
If I don't find anything else.
Yeah. That's very nice.
It's as though you simply continue doing what you're doing as you would when you're doing something in the street. You continue it.
Sound come into its own. What does that mean? For one thing, it means that noises are as useful to new music as so-called musical tones, for the simple reason that they are songs.
John Milton Cage was born in Los Angeles on September 5th, 1912. His mother was a writer for a local newspaper. His father was a successful and imaginative inventor.
I frequently say, and it's true, that my father was an inventor, and that if I have anything to give in my work, it derives from its having some discovery in it, or something with which we're not familiar.
Cage studied music at an early age and attended Los Angeles High School. He dropped out of Pomona College after 2 years to travel and study in Europe. After another year in New York, Cage returned to California, took courses in music theory at UCLA, and began studying under the great composer Arnold Schoenberg. But he soon realized that he had little feeling for harmony, one of the basic elements of musical composition.
Well, I guess I did have an aversion. I certainly had no feeling for harmony. And Schoenberg thought that would make it impossible for me to write music. But I'd already promised him to devote my life to music. So I simply said, well, then I'll beat. He said, what? I asked him why I wouldn't be able to write music, and he said, you'll come to a wall. You won't be able to get through. And so I said, I'll beat my head against that wall. Percussion music is a contemporary transition from keyboard-influenced music to the all-sound music of the future. Any sound is acceptable to the composer of percussion music. Is a truck passing by music? Which is more musical? A truck passing by a factory or a truck passing by a music school?
As an accomplished visual artist, Cage has extended his impact to this medium. Cage also has many interests outside the arts. He is an imaginative cook, an avid horticulturist, and as a recognized authority on mushrooms, he was a founder of the New York Mycological Society.
This is another kind, which is also good. Colibia radicata.
I sent John Macrobitic cookbook, and because I knew that he was a very, very incredible cook, actually. And so that was a way that I thought maybe he might want to get into macrobiotic, and he did. And it was amazing. I just respect his attitude of always being open to new things.
And it doesn't seem so much about originality as just encouraging others to just tweak up their sensibility a little bit and to see what's right in front of them.
Cage did feel and say that any sound could take its place in a piece of music. There was no sound that per se was not musical, that any sound could be part of a piece of music. Cage was asked at one time about that, did he mean to be funny? And he said, no, he didn't mean to be funny, but if something funny happened, that was acceptable to him. And he said, on the whole, I prefer laughter to tears.
Yeah, I suppose that's what I like a lot about Cage, is he's pretty funny. Makes me laugh. I trust that. I trust laughter more than most things.
He recognized very early that the danger in this sort of thing he was doing was being foolish. He said, I want to be free without being foolish. I think what you have to remember is that in everything that Cage does, there is a structure. Cage is very conscious of the need for structure in any a work of art.
Yes, the whole thing is very determined, but those determinations were all arrived at by two different chance operations. One involved imperfections in the paper that I was writing on. I was writing on very large rolls of graph paper, and I would make tosses of 3 coins 6 times, getting numbers from 1 to 64. Then I made multiples of 64 because I was writing a virtuoso piece. And then within a given structural area on this graph paper, which had also been determined by chance operations, I observed and intensified the number of imperfections in the paper that I had received through the chance operations. I got involved in that in the middle and late 40s, and it took the place of psychoanalysis, because I was in not only in a troubled state personally, but I was concerned about why one would write music at this time in this society. And then it became clear that the function of art is not to communicate one's personal ideas or feelings, but rather to imitate nature in her manner of operation. In the mushrooms, it's absolutely necessary, you see, if you're going to eat them as I do, not to eat one which is deadly. Whereas I take the attitude in music that no sounds are deadly. It's like the Zen statement, every day is a beautiful day. Everything is pleasing, providing you haven't got the notion of pleasing and displeasing in you. It's actually very difficult to get free of one's notions of order and one's tastes.
He's not putting you on. He's not trying to one-up you, trying to be superior to you. He's trying to demonstrate something you haven't heard before.
In a sense, it's that everything in the world is blessed.
The giving up of the ego and the self as a composer and turning it over to something else, be it chance or destiny or God or whatever it might be. He'll throw the I Ching to ascertain certain specific choices within which he can operate. But once those choices have been made, then everything from the calligraphy used in working it out to his insistence that the performers do it as he specifies is extremely ordered, rigid even.
Of course, one of Cage's main influences has been as a conduit for the ideas of Duchamp.
Marcel Duchamp, the great French painter who died in New York in 1968, had a tremendous impact on avant-garde art and ideas in this country, and especially on John Cage. In his famous Nude Descending a Staircase of 1912, and works he called ready-mades, found objects which he signed and submitted as finished works of art, Duchamp challenged every traditional notion that the creative artist was endowed with special expressive power and insight.
The concept had been that man was the center of things and that the center of the center was his feelings and his emotions. Duchamp broke with that completely and decisively. Basically, I think what he was getting at was a philosophical point of view which was centered on doubt. He doubted everything.
And unfortunately, people today, especially the layman or the public, want something that pleases him, and that's taste. And there are all kinds of three forms of it: bad, good, and indifferent taste. So I'm on the indifferent taste boat.
Well, in Cage's case, I think it was purely because he felt that his own personal biases and feelings and emotions were not as interesting as what could be gotten at by other means. He wanted to imitate nature in its manner of operation, how nature actually works. And in his mind, and in the mind of many modern physicists, that is a random, playful form of activity, purposeless. But as he said, the highest purpose is to have no purpose.
Cage is a frequent visitor at the home in the French countryside of Teenie Duchamp, widow of Marcel.
When was this taken?
From the time of Cage's association with Duchamp, a master chess player, the game has been an important part of Cage's life.
Beautiful picture.
In 1986, Cage created Chess Piece, a chance-determined film of the chess match between the two friends.
What I need to know are the various things you can change on the camera.
Okay. There are three things you can change. The first thing is here the opening from 2.2 to 22.
Between 2.2 and 2.8, I can move slowly?
Yes, of course. If you put 2.2 and 2.3, you will not see difference on the film.
I'm not concerned with what we see.
No.
I'm
Okay.
concerned with where we can move this.
Yes, but you have to move this. If you don't see any difference,
No,
it's
no,
not
I'm not concerned about that.
Okay, okay.
I'm concerned about being able to tell you where to put it.
Yes. You want to look the difference?
No.
No? You don't want to look?
No, all I want to know are the possible changes.
Okay.
I work from chance operations.
You never look in the camera?
No, and I don't hear music before I write it.
Okay.
Well, I've always used the I Ching, or I Ging, chance operations. I use it as a discipline in order to free my work from my memory and from my likes and dislikes. Oh, I see it. It's very nice. I don't mind the floor.
You don't mind?
No, it's good.
Here you don't see. If we can be wider, that you see the floor. I show you. I show you.
Actually, I like what I saw.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. But if we use the two numbers 12 and 15, the frame will be wider. So
No,
you
I like it the way it is.
Okay.
I think if we get it too exact on the table, in fact, I found the gray of the floor good to see.
Mm. So we go. Okay, 10 seconds. Voilà.
Shall we start another one?
Right away. Really?
Because they...
Is it still running? What are they doing?
What?
What are they doing?
I think they're taking the movie.
This is the shot.
All right. And the cut we want is from 133 to 153. I mustn't become overconfident now. This is not one of the shots. This is in between, isn't it?
Oh, this is the next shot.
What?
This is the next shot.
Oh, really? Each shot is being cut at least once, and some are cut twice, and some are cut 3 times. And that's all the result of chance operations.
Mm-hmm.
Taken up. In Zen, they say, if something is boring after 2 minutes, try it for 4. If still boring, try it for 8, 16, 32, and so on. Eventually, one discovers that it's not boring at all, but very interesting.
What are they doing?
What?
What are they doing?
I think they're taking a movie.
In 1948, Cage and Cunningham made their first of several visits to the Summer Institute of Black Mountain College in North Carolina, known for its lively atmosphere and experimental curriculum. Many creative people were on the faculty at that time, among them Joseph Albers and Buckminster Fuller. Faculty and students often performed together in numerous experimental productions. It was at Black Mountain College that Cage and Cunningham first met painter Robert Rauschenberg.
Maturing artistically, working with John and Merce, actually gave me license to do anything.
They had permission, thanks to Cage's influence as a person and as an artist, to do what they liked, to paint, in the case of John's, an American flag or a target. In the case of Rauschenberg, used stuffed animals in his paintings. They looked at the world again and not at themselves, and tried to convey what the world was about. So he was a liberating influence. He was always there, and one trusted him to do the right thing, you know. He has immense authority. He is, after all, a guru. And just the fact that he was there, and with his fantastic assurance, was important to us all, you know.
The first work in which Cage, Cunningham, and Rauschenberg joined forces was the dance Minutia in 1954. With Cunningham's choreography, Cage's music, and sets and costumes by Rauschenberg.
I was trying to, I even tried helium balloons because there was nothing to hang it from. He wanted to jump over it, pass through it, crawl under it, and it shouldn't weigh anything for traveling.
That's right. Very simple restrictions.
Just like in costumes. He didn't want to know that he was wearing anything. But he had to be covered. Wasn't that? See, that's where I envied John. Because he could throw any kind of sound on top of anything, you know. And everybody would either ignore it or admire it or hate it.
In 1982, Cage prepares for an upcoming performance of Speech, written in 1955 for 5 radios and Reader.
This is Bernie Wagon Blast, Shadow Traffic for 1010 Win.
Where can you get $500 off on a 1980?
Does that refer to frequencies on the dial? That's
No,
what was confusing to me.
It's time. Don't search around for something. During your silences, turn to some point that you don't know what it is, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get what you've fished, so to speak. You'll have a lot to do. Now, when it says espressivo, that means you can turn the volume up and down in volume. Constant volume means go to some constant thing and stay there.
Okay, wait a minute. What about crescendo?
That means what it says.
Well, just-
Get gradually louder and louder.
And then off.
Uh-huh.
And
If
you
miss,
what do
If you have your watch, you'll know then where to
I'm
pick
at.
up.
Yeah, okay.
Try
Because
not
the
to
watch
miss.
is going to be constant.
Try not to miss. On the other hand, you'll be the only one who knows that you missed.
The message they won't forget. Can't confirm. Overburn.
And then we start moving around the way people do with radio.
With all of our stuff under our arms.
We'll start here with our radios, and we'll move out anywhere you like into the space, and you can either stay still or you can move. So I'm now putting on my glasses.
Hold on there.
No, I'm just kidding. New York City weather. Check this out. Anderson is cautiously
Espressivo.
Does not change the, it's just this?
This is what you should change in between.
In the 1 second between things.
Right. Is that about what you have?
Yeah. Well, many times I have 1 second. I just can't change it.
Yeah.
Well, I've rehearsed.
Here we go again. So are you enjoying what you're hearing?
Cage? He's up in the balcony. Has donated space in the Buffalo Hotel to stand up for readings upstage. Cassett says he sees nothing, quote, improper, unquote, about attributing to a public official charge.
In all the variety of Cage's prolific output, one work remains central. In 1952, after seeing an all-white painting by Robert Rauschenberg, Cage was encouraged to make the same point in sound. An entire composition based on chance operations in which the performer did nothing.
This is the purest example of John's ideas of letting sounds be themselves. It's a musical composition in which the pianist sits at a piano and the music is the ambient sounds in the room during those 4 minutes and 33 seconds.
What in this particular case Cage has done is simply presented them a formal setting for them to perceive reality as art, perceive life as art.
You won't believe this probably, but I wrote 433 note by note, and all of the notes were silent, but they all had different lengths. And when I added them all up, they came to 433.
I have a question for you. How would you feel if someone made some rude bodily noise in the middle of your piece, 433?
I would simply listen. I think the sounds are continually taking place. One of the things that's been noticed from a musical point of view is the many coughs that take place at concerts. And for most of our musical literature, coughing is a kind of interruption or a flaw. It has nothing to do with the music. Whereas if we have an interest in sound, rather than, that is to say, the experience of listening, a cough is as audible and finally as interesting as any other sound. The material of music is sound and silence. Integrating these is composing. I have nothing to say, and I am saying it.
There were a lot of artists, even at that time in Woodstock, and they were incensed. They were in an uproar over the performance. And afterwards, John opened the floor to questions, and one of the artists got up and said, "Good people of Woodstock, I think we should run these people out of town." That was the reaction.
Have you learned anything through the great debate over this piece, Silence?
I'm not so interested in learning as in changing my mind. And that has changed. And I think all of us have changed in the time since 433 was first made in the early 50s. We have less confidence now in the time as it goes into the future. We wonder, for instance, how long the future will be. We don't take for granted that it will be forever. We wonder whether you might say we wonder whether we have ruined the silence. Our intention is to affirm this life, not to bring order out of chaos, nor to suggest improvements in creation, but simply to wake up to the very life we're living, which is so excellent once one gets one's mind and one's desires out of its way and lets it act of its own accord